Hey guys, another reviewer here, and I'm finally doing what you have all been waiting for. I'm finally putting a bookend to the Eschalon series of reviews and sharing with you my experience of Eschalon Book 3. Eschalon Book 3 is an isometric turn-based RPG, just like its predecessors. It was released in 2014 by Basilisk Games to bookend the Eschalon series. To start right off, it's all very similar to Eschalon Book 2. They changed how a lot of things look graphically, but from what I can tell, they didn't actually change anything else. It's like playing Eschalon Book 2, just with a different story. I guess they did add a box on top of the map that tells you what area you're in. That's cool. Really? Ugh. This wouldn't be that odd if there weren't so many gameplay mechanics and user interface changes between Eschalon Book 1 and Book 2. I guess they felt like they nailed it with Book 2, so they found no real need to change it any further other than a couple of visual and aesthetic things. I mean, if you know how I felt about Eschalon Book 2, then you know I disagree. But anyway, we'll move on. The game starts directly where the last one left off. You confronted a literal alien, or Oricor as they're called in this universe, called the One, intent on destroying you if you didn't give in to his demands. But instead of hitting you, the beam from his metallic wand hits the Crux of Fire, a mythical gemstone that is kind of the MacGuffin of the series, in your hands, and sends you off to a distant land. This distant land is called... I don't give a fuck. The locations in this series matter so little. I couldn't even tell you what the region that this game took place in was called until I went through the footage. Apparently it's called Wilderin, which is an isolated region in the western end of Eschalon, whereas the other two games took place on the eastern end. Which is kind of odd, because you'd think there would be some cultural differences between the two halves of the globe. So upon realizing all your equipment is gone and all you have in your inventory is the Crux of Fire, you begin exploring your surroundings to find that you're in a volcano. Eventually you'll find a mining town called Rockhammer. After stumbling around and picking up side quests, you'll inevitably come upon a shop called Rockhammer Mining Core Minerals and Trades, where if you ask the shopkeeper about the Crux of Fire, she begins to explain that they are said to be pure stones of a mineral known as Candesium, which is mostly found to resemble sand, and she doesn't think they exist because she hasn't seen a chunk of them larger than a pebble. After pressing forward, you find that skilled artisans can use it to empower basically anything, weapons, armor, or potions. I don't think you ever get an opportunity to do so, even though you do find Candesium dust in this game. Though I do find it quite charming that she tells you what happens when you handle Candesium with your bare hands, being we've been doing it for about 3 games, and it causes you to become gravely ill. That's right, your hair falls out, your skin will blister, and you basically wither away to death. She then reveals that she knows your name and asks if that's you. She lets you know that Lilith had paid her to wait for you to show up, and let you know that she was waiting for you at a camp west of Rockhammer. Being that your constant motif in this series as the player is to never remember anything or retain any new information, maybe seeing a familiar face will help. So you find Lilith, and she explains to you that your trip to Talishorn was a trap, and that you weren't supposed to survive. Again. She explains that though Corin's intentions were initially pure, he was misguided in his attempts and possibly under the influence of the One, or at least that's what Erebor believes. You know, Erebor! The guy that was in the same room and within earshot of every conversation you had with Corin, excluding like the last few minutes of the last game. You know, the guy who had no merit for the main story whatsoever. He never had anything to tell you and never once spoke up. You know, come to think of it, I think Corin was only in the second game so that you could get the information that Erebor would have given you, but, you know, you got to see the One kill him in front of you to reveal his true intentions. However, that gets kind of muddy later on, and, well, we'll get to that. You tell Lilith that you don't remember getting teleported, even though it just happened. You find out that you didn't only travel in distance, but also in time. The events that you just claimed you don't remember actually happened 6 months ago. Erebor had estimated how long it would be before you reappeared and sent Lilith to find you. Erebor had apparently inherited the role of Guildmaster with Corin gone, and is now leading the war against the One. You find out that Lilith was sent to find you not because she's a member of the Crius Vindica, but because she was a shadow tracker. Someone that used any means necessary, apparently mostly illegal and unethical, in order to hunt down people or things. Erebor had apparently hired her in the past to recover items that were stolen from Shadowmerc, and they became close. I'm really not too surprised that they knew each other. I mean, there's a whole 30 people in Theramore that hadn't turned bandit. When asked what you're supposed to do now, she tells you that that's between you and Erebor. She was just sent to find you, give you a sealed note from Erebor, and then investigate goblin sightings in Wilderin. Again with the goblins. Upon reading Erebor's letter, he first fills you in on the events that happened at the end of the previous game. Apparently Erebor was able to see what was going on through the strange viewing glasses that both you and Corrin had. Son of a bitch! More people are able to just watch me? Oh, Jesus. Whenever you have about half a dozen people telling you that they've been watching you, you start to feel kind of personally violated. You know what I mean? In the last 6 months, Erebor has found out more about the Oricor, finding that they're not from this world as we know it, that they're from the past or the future of Eschalon, and possess a magic that allows them to bend time as well as seeing into other people's minds, giving them the ability to influence them. Wait, so that's why Erebor didn't say anything about this 6 months ago? He just didn't know the Oricor could do that? Listen, I understand that the Crius Vindica's Genesis story just kind of keeps the Oricor out of it, because how would you really be able to explain, oh hey, this guild that we put so much stock into, well, it was kind of started by mythical creatures, so do with that information as you will. But you know this is a thing that could happen, you knew this was a thing that could happen, you saw it in your last adventure with Sparrow! I mean, Jesus, like, even Corrin tells you that if you seem even a little bit out of your right mind in the last game, he's going to strike you down. Like, did Corrin and Erebor seriously never fucking talk? The note continues to explain that the one's name is actually Malcor, and he desires to bring together the Crux for reasons that are against the will of the other Oricor. Which we already know. He believes the dwarves are involved in some way, other than us stealing the Crux we currently hold from them, I guess. And this game tells you that in order to advance, we need to collect the rest of the Crux to keep them from Malcor. He currently has the Crux of Ages, and the other two are undiscovered. I thought only one of them was undiscovered. Didn't the last game tell us that a Barian warlord held the Crux of Wisdom? Erebor's note continues to tell you that you have to locate an old friend of his named Karamichlin the Silver, who, if he lives, is the oldest being in all of Eschalon, and his wisdom far exceeds that of anyone ever. Unfortunately, he's imprisoned by a Barian warlord named Olundar, who holds him in a dungeon in the Astral Range. Oh. He advises you to see the owner of the Black and Bone Tavern in Moonrise to suggest an appropriate gift to gain his favor so that you can speak to Karamichlin. He warns you against going to the Astral Range head-on. You find Moonrise and go into a tavern that isn't called the Black and Bone, it's called Merryweather Spirits. If you ask about the Black and Bone Tavern, the tavern owner tells you that she's never heard of it before and then vaguely threatens you by saying if a place like that did exist, you'd probably get burned. You can ask her for work, and she tells you to deliver a very important sealed letter, but do not read it. She tells you have to find a secret encampment in Elder Oak Forest and deliver it to a ranger named Ranimer. Ranimer? What? Then return with a code word he gives you. You're not going to attack me, are you? You're acting really weird. Does the name Jet Li mean anything to you? Once you find the encampment and speak to Ranimer, I swear in a game full of stupid names, that has to be the worst, and deliver the letter. He examines it and gives you the code word Fireglow. You return to Shelta and give her the code word. She informs you that Ranimer is her brother, and she has him evaluate people for her. She explains that the Black and Bone Tavern is in another part of Moonrise, and you must be baptized at the temple to enter it. You have to acquire a sigil of fire, wear it, and enter the Temple of Rye at night, and speak to Shepherd Nicholas. You have to tell him you wish to be baptized in fire, and if all these conditions are met, he will show you the way. She goes on to explain why the port side of Moonrise is hidden like that, as well as going into a dark history involving slave trade. She then explains that Moonrise has reformed and has actually changed greatly, but unfortunately laws are much harder to change, so the screening process is the aspect that still remains to this day. You can find a sigil of fire in several different places, like on a body, in a giant clam, or in a red ceramic jar. You can also get one by lying to Ranimer. I've never said that name out loud. Jesus Christ. But anyway, during a side quest that involves an old tree and a lost witch. It's kind of complex, so we're not really going to get into it, but you do have to at least start the quest in order to finish the game. Once you have it and enter the temple, Shepherd Nicholas tells you to take the western path to the baptismal font and pass through the flames. You do so and find a stairwell that leads to a place called Atrox Deep, another guild repository, and Old Moonrise. We'll get into the repository later because, of course, there's another world-crossing, very vague collection quest that you have to go on. The series seems to love to do that, doesn't it? Anyway, you climb the stairs at the other end of the hallway and emerge in Old Moonrise. You enter the Black and Bone Tavern and speak to the woman there named Dania. You inform her that you are to see the tavern owner about a warlord named Alundar. She reveals that she is the owner and asks you what you want to know about him. You explain that you were sent to find out how to get on his good side to speak to one of his prisoners. She laughs directly in your fucking face and tells you what you're trying to do isn't going to work. She tells you he's her brother and explains that it's basically impossible. You inform her that you're on a very important quest, and I'm sure that's going to change your tune. She continues to mock you and explains how he was given the entire astral range, and Dania was bonded into marriage with a northern warlord as part of the deal for some reason. But she fled. After several mentions of how he keeps the heads of his enemies and that it's your head if you persist in this venture, she decides that that would be your answer. If you can bring him the head of one of his foes, him helping you might actually be possible. Apparently, one of the hundreds of enemies Alundar has, one sticks out, the Akadai Kingspawn of Merkland. She explains to you that the Akadai are the amphibious tribal inhabitants of Merkland, which is a murky, humid swamp, insert Uranus joke here, and they're very territorial. A ship carrying 100,000 gold worth of spices was sunk by the Akadai Kingspawn as it passed too close to the shores of Merkland, but retaliation would be impossible as him and his warriors only know the arid and mountainous ranges, so attempting to stage an attack on Merkland would no doubt be suicide. However, if someone else were to go through the effort, he would likely be very thankful. At this point, the game has you choose your own quest as to whether you want to take the Akadai King's head or to find another option. Either way, you have to head to Merkland for the solution. Once you reach the entrance to the Merkland's Pass in the southern boglands, you find it gated off, and the only way through is by putting a 4-number code. You can find a letter in a drawer in the northwestern corner of the southern boglands in a place called the Sea Warden's Guild that has the code on it, but in order to get in, you have to turn the cranks of 2 wells nearby and fight your way through marauders. Or you can just go through the Rockhammer Mine, find the security key in the 2nd floor, and unlock the southern exit that leads to the Dead Man's Strand. The latter option is definitely easier, and I had done it before I even knew Merkland even existed. Anyway, whichever way you get to Dead Man's Strand, you take a raft that takes you to Merkland, where you immediately get attacked by the Akadai. After fighting through them and finding yourself in the presence of the Akadai Kingspawn, he immediately asks you why you've brought death and warmongering to his kin. You explain you had no intention of taking innocent lives and are on a quest of great importance. He immediately assumes you're here for what he refers to as the Great Akadai Crystal. When you ask him what that is, he reveals to you that it's a crux stone. So you tell him that yes, that's why you're here. The Akadai Kingspawn continues to explain that many generations ago, the Great Crystal was brought to them by the Wee folk? Whoever they are. I guess the Oricor interacted directly with the Akadai, but not the humans or dwarves? Sure, why not? He tells you that he was charged with protecting the crystal and keeping it in his lands until the last of his species falls, which, being you slew them all, that day has come, and he offers the crux to you so that you spare the tribe and lead war away from their lands. At this point, you could just murder the Kingspawn and his guards to cut off his head and continue the game, ensuring that, the Akadai line ends right then and there. However, he does make you an offer that he will give you the crux in exchange for his life. You'd think that'd be a better method than the time that you broke into the dwarven sacred mine and, slaughtered many innocent lives in order to steal the crux right from under their noses, but spoiler alert, it's not. If you accept his offer, he informs you that they keep the crux underground, and in order to access it, you need to have an Akadai gland that secretes pheromones that a tentacled plant will sense and allow you access to the underground. He won't be able to stop the Akadai and other creatures that dwell down there from attacking you, and you'll have to continue your rampage with his blessing, I guess. You can still loot the gland from him and continue the game if you kill him, but obviously I didn't do that. Once you reach the tentacle plant, it reaches for you and pulls you through the ground, dropping you into the tunnels below. Here, you'll have to fight more Akadai and other creatures, as well as loot several royal graves to find a large ruby, a large emerald, and a large diamond for a giant clam puzzle. One of these graves holds an Akadai withered head, which serves as your other option for delivering the Kingspawn head to Alundar. The game flat out tells you that he has no real way of knowing what the king spawn actually looks like, so fuck him, right? I mean, how could the game possibly be wrong? Correctly performing the giant clam puzzle will give you access to a giant clam that is holding the Crux of Terra. You know, when I started working on this game series all those years ago, I never thought I would be talking about a series of giant clams. Oh, the strange journeys life takes you on. Anyway, now that you have the Crux of Terra, you can leave the Akadai underworld, but the exit tentacle tree will only work if you have a fetid grub tumor in your inventory, which, with as many fetid grubs that you have to fight in the hallway leading to the Crux of Terra, you should have one. As you exit, you feel the presence of another person being nearby, despite no one being around. I made sure of that as I had casually wiped out many of the Akadai's number earlier. It's Erebor, contacting you via a mental link. He tells you that you can only communicate for a few moments before the mental link becomes dangerous. Apparently he isn't aware that it doesn't matter. Everybody and their brother have been watching me through this entire journey. He tells you that he thinks acquiring the second Crux Stone is what allowed him to contact you. He had used several words of magic in the note Lilith gave you, which had allowed him to follow your location, but it only became precise the moment you came in possession of the Crux of Terra. Unfortunately, it will assist your enemies in finding you faster as well. I don't remember Abracadabra, Alakazam, or any other Pokemon mentioned in that note. Erebor informs you that the goblins were sent to the shores of Wilderin by the One to hunt down the final two Crux, as they're both somewhere in that region. It was fortunate that you managed to find the Crux of Terra before they did, but there's more information on the Oricore that Erebor needs to tell you. The Oricore have come to this world to stop a horrible event. Apparently, a great eruption of magma will occur that will destroy all of Eschalon. The Oricore wish to gather the Crux to stop it, while the One wishes to return home, leaving Eschalon to be destroyed. So wait, first they tell me that a cataclysmic event's going to happen if the four Crux are brought together, but that turns out to be a lie, just so the Assembly can keep them apart so the One can't steal them. But then, a cataclysm's gonna happen anyway? As it turns out, Malcor and the rest of the Oricore are from the future of Eschalon. The timeline where this cataclysmic event has already happened, but they've come back to stop it. Unfortunately, their machine broke apart, so they need time to gather resources and fix it before this eruption occurs. That's why they separated the Crux and left the pieces in the hands of the factions of Eschalon. Malcor disagrees with their motives and wishes to return home himself, letting the cataclysm happen. Whoa, Doc, this is getting heavy. Before closing the mental link, Erebor tells you that you must proceed as planned. Go to the Astral Range, try to earn Alundar's trust, and speak to Kara Micklin. It is absolutely imperative that we prevent Malcor from getting the rest of the Crux Stones and allowing the eruption to happen. Erebor tells you that he will teleport to you when you need him the most, but he won't be able to contact you until then. So wait, now it's just a race of time to get the third stone, right? Because he only needs two. It's kind of an important thing that you forgot to bring up again, that in the last game, the One only needed two. So, I mean, if he only needs two, we have to get the third one because it's still possible for him to get that second one, right, Erebor? I mean, you think you ought to bring that up. It's kind of an important point to reiterate here. As you try to find a way into the Astral Range to the north, you come across a caravan in Macross Point where you find Lilith. She informs you that the goblins have reached Wilderin. One group just south of the caravan, and another group further south near an abandoned castle on the coastline near Merklin, preparing to go after the Crux you'd already found. She tells you that while you find your way into the Astral Range to speak to Kara Micklin, she's to find forces to join the fight in the coming war. She continues to explain that Malcor needs to gather the four Crux Stones to leave the world and allow the cataclysm to destroy the Earth, while the rest of the Oricore want to get the Crux together to collapse the volcano, sealing it to prevent the cataclysm. Okay, so Malcor needs four now. I mean, is this cataclysm real or not? Because before, we had to keep the Crux apart to prevent said cataclysm, but now we have to bring them together to prevent the cataclysm. And to be honest with you, I think the Oricore are fucked in the head. Like, seriously, these guys are basically like the boy who cried wolf here. Lilith continues to tell you that Erebor got into contact with the leader of the Oricore, but if a war does break out, they'd be of little help against goblins and Tarax. You ask her for some insight on how to get into the Astral Range, and she explains to you that other than the Crux, Malcor's troops are looking for four strange objects that will open a hidden path north, as he has constructed a number of secret passages. So wait a second, He constructed the paths, but he doesn't have the things that it requires to get through them? And you said they constructed multiple paths. Can we go through one that doesn't require 4 strange pieces? Unfortunately, Lilith has no idea what the pieces look like or where they are. So once again, you get to scour the world looking for strange things to use to get through the end of the game. You should have an idea of what you're looking for, as you found one in the Akadai Underground in an egg case called a tungsten bracket widget. You remember that quest that involved the old tree and the missing witch from Ramoner that I had mentioned earlier? God, Ramoner. I can't get over that name. Anyway, now's the time for that quest to pay off. You have to take the key from the quest to the fence in Elder Oak to give you access to the witch's house. She has a red ceramic jar that you have to blow up to get the Guild Moon Pendant 13. This corresponds with Vault 13, not that one, and the Guild Repository in the Moonrise Underground, where you'll find a Chromium Spring widget, among other things. You'll find the next widget in a wrecked ship off the southern shores of the Southern Boglands. It's in a chest in the second level of the ship, locked with the silver key that you can get off a body in the Sea Warden's Guild. It's called the Titanium Gear widget. The final widget is in the castle by the sea on the southern end of the island in the abandoned castle Lilith mentioned. It's populated with goblins, but once you fight through it and make your way into the dungeon, you find a series of keys and a series of trap chests that open locked doors that lead you to the next trap chest in the series. With another key in it, then you do a pressure plate puzzle to find the Platinum Bolt widget. Speaking of goblins, they were basically chaff in the first game, and then totally non-existent in the second game, being that the Tarax were the main baddies there. But now they're absolute badasses that can take almost all of the punishment that you throw at them. They're about 4 times hardier than they were in the first game, and you really feel it when you fight off a horde of them, especially in the castle by the sea, where they're in the structure you're trying to find your way in. Anyway, picking up the strange items gains you no insight on where you're supposed to go next. You travel the world until you find the entrance to the Omentor Temple in the Valley of the Wanderer. It's the one that has a massive granite skull with a trail of blood coming out of the mouth for an entrance. I mean, as far as set pieces go that convey this is a place you should probably check out, they nailed it here. Alright, let's do this, I guess. Once you enter, you find immediately that this place is a huge maze with a large locked door in front of you. You get led through to more traps and monsters until you find a mechanical device to put one of the widgets in that opens the large door. Obviously, there are 3 more trapped pathways you have to work your way through for the purpose of finding 3 more mechanical devices to open 3 more locked doors. So I don't really have to go too in-depth in what we do at this temple. Nothing relevant really happens here anyway. You do fight a few very powerful unique enemies, though. The only suggestion I can make for this temple, and, if that's if you decide to take my advice at all, is to save often. The traps and enemies in this place are pretty unforgivable, being that you'll enter a room, the doors will lock right behind your heels, and enemies will spawn right in your face. And this is for unavoidable stuff that you have to do to progress. Once you emerge from the stairs, you find, after putting all the strange widgets into their proper mechanical devices, you find yourself in the Western Astral Range. If you head to the northern coast of the Eastern Astral Range, you run into a familiar face. It's Captain Morgan. He's clearly drunk and singing a sea shanty, but he recognizes you as you approach him. He has nothing of value to say at this point, he just tells you he's leader of the Eschalon Maritime First Alert Corps. As you speak to him, you realize he's making all this up, and it seems that he's stuck here due to the astral range being fairly dangerous and the roads out are closed. You were heavily involved in this downward spiral as well. Just wanted to make sure you remember that. Anyway, once you make your way through Warlord's Pass and enter Alundar's domain, you find Alundar and speak to him. He assumes that you're there to seek passage through his lands, which was something you were supposed to be able to do, but that content was never released. So instead, you offer a trade. He proceeds to point out his wealth and then mocks your clothing and tells you smell bad. Really considering killing this guy. You present him with the Akadai withered head. He's unsure what it is at first, but you tell him that it's the head of the Akadai Kingspawn, and you claimed it specifically to bring it to him. He points out that the head is indeed from a Kingspawn, but it's not fresh. It could even be decades old. Because of course he can tell that! What am I, the most dim-witted person in this entire game? Jesus Christ, I thought it was the Chancellor, but even with the 2 Crux, everybody seems to know when I'm trying to pull a fast one. Jesus Christ, these gems are fucking useless. You manage to convince him that it's the right head, so he decides to celebrate, and asks you what you would like in return.
Obviously, you ask to visit one of his prisoners, because that's what we're here for, and when he asks who, you answer Kara Micklin. He's hesitant at first, but again, because despite being a warlord, this guy's apparently a huge pushover. He grants you 5 minutes with the prisoner, and you enter the dungeon and solve a pair of math puzzles in order to gain access to Kara Micklin's cell. Once you finally reach him, you find he's a dragon.
Holy shit, there's a dragon in this game? Oh man, this is way better than that alien reveal at the end of the last game. I'm not gonna fight this bastard, am I?
He tells you that he is in fact Kara Micklin the Silver, that he's the last remaining dragon of the West Winds, and he already knows why you're here.
Of course he fucking does.
He wants you to tell him anyway, as he so rarely gets to speak with outsiders. You mention that Erebor sent you and you're looking for guidance on the Crux Stones, so Kara Micklin allows you to ask whatever questions you have. You can ask him about the Cataclysm, and he tells you that an ancient rift cracked in the bedrock clear to Eschalon's core.
So Eschalon is the planet? What fucking core? This place shouldn't even have fucking gravity!
An unfathomable amount of pressure is pushing magma up through the bedrock, creating a great volcanic cone which will cause an explosion. The magma is apparently rich in candesium, the element the Crux are made of, which has already been revealed to you as toxic. While fire, ash, and stone will rain upon every inch of Eschalon, it'll be covered by the glow of candesium dust. You can also ask about the Auricor and find out the Cataclysm is already set to happen, because the Auricor are actually magic space dwarves that were deep enough underground to survive the Cataclysm and not even realize it happened.
We really need an ancient dragon to tell us this? I mean, it's very probable that the first person you talk to in the very first game tells you this. The big reveal of the entire series is literally spoiled immediately!
He continues to tell you that the dwarves that will be trapped underground are mutated by polluted water that drips down to them, as well as evolving out of necessity to survive in their surroundings. They spend centuries working out their technology to the point of where they use the energy and candesium in ways we wouldn't understand. They emerge from the underground a millennium later as gray aliens with no knowledge of their dwarven history. When you ask him why the Auricor want to prevent the Cataclysm, he explains that when they emerged from the underworld, they found that Eschalon had become a new unknown world that they couldn't possibly survive in. They then decided to travel back in time to prevent the Cataclysm that would cause them to lose their past and future.
Because they can do that.
They apparently harnessed the power of the candesium stones they had found, the Crux Stones, to achieve this time travel, but they overshot their arrival date by more than 200 years, and their craft suffered critical damage which they needed to fix to finish their mission.
Yeah, 400 years is over 200 years. I mean, did the Auricor intend to get here 200 years before the Cataclysm, or is Corrin the dimwit of the last game? I mean, he tells you that the Crius Vindica was established over 4 centuries ago, and then Shinna tells you that the Assembly established the Crius Vindica. So, did the people who made this game even play the last fucking game?
Kara Micklin then continues to explain that the Crux Stones were separated to give the Auricor time to repair their craft, which we've already heard 87 times already, and then forms a more sympathetic series of events that's led to what Malcor is attempting to do now, saying he simply disagreed with the Assembly and attempted to point out how the Assembly's plan is flawed, and gave well-informed evidence that changing the timeline could be disastrous, but was rejected as a traitor and cast out. You reason that if Malcor succeeds, everyone dies. He takes a nihilist view and basically says that we all have to die sometime, but also, if the planet isn't allowed to vent, it'll break apart, or the Auricor coming back to prevent the Cataclysm will have created a paradox cascade that could end all of existence.
The game proceeds to have you ask the intelligent question of why Malcor didn't just let you destroy the Crux and Talus Horn anyway. I mean, the game just doesn't feel like it knows how it wants to close its story.
Kara Micklin responds by saying Malcor needs all 4 Crux to generate enough power to get back to the exact moment the Assembly left their time to crash his craft into theirs to prevent the paradox, valiantly sacrificing himself and fusing the timelines.
Malcor isn't sacrificing shit. If he goes back and crashes into the Auricor vessel before it goes back in time, then that prevents him from having to do it and dying himself. I mean, he did come on that ship. Therefore, he's still going to exist. I mean, unless, of course, his intention is to go back and destroy the entirety of the Auricor, in which case, that's stupid. Fuck you.
You can threaten to destroy the crux in front of the dragon, but he tells you that he'd burn you to death, and it's not your decision to make, nor is it Corrin's or Erebor's, but the Oracore. You ask him where you can locate the fourth crux. The dragon then reveals that he had it all along among his gold hoard. You tell him that you would like to have Erebor come so you can get the crux of wisdom, but Karamicklin refuses to give it to you when you notice someone else is approaching you in the room. An old friend. It's revealed that it's Malcor, as the dragon hands over the fourth crux to him. The one speaks to you in an entirely different way than he has in the past, claiming that you'll be remembered as more than a hero, but a champion, a savior, and he hopes you don't resent him for what he's put you through.
Wait, what?
He then tells you that you erased your memory to keep Erebor and Corrin from learning the truth, that you were working with Malcor all along.
What?
You express your disbelief in what Malcor is telling you, only to have him assert that your task has been to push Erebor to help you locate the Crux Stones. You then ask why Malcor had attempted to kill you at Talishorn. It was apparently a ruse for Erebor, who was watching. He didn't intend to send the Crux of Fire to Wilderin with you, but everything went as planned as far as Erebor leading you to the missing Crux Stones.
Okay, wait, stop for 1 second here. Erebor was watching through the scrying glasses. He wasn't even actually there. You killed Corrin in front of me, so I can't really buy that your intentions are all that peaceful, especially because your plans involve having a war wash over the entire region. This is all really hard to buy, considering, oh, you didn't mean to send the Crux with me to Wilderin. Yeah, but if you hadn't hit the Crux, I'd have been vaporized.
Erebor then appears and expresses his dismay for Karamicklin before telling you to keep the Crux close to you so Malcor doesn't attack you out of fear he'll accidentally destroy them.
Yeah, that really helped before. I mean, wouldn't I be turned to dust and the Crux would be fine? Like at the end of the last game? God damn it, who fucking wrote this anyway?
Malcor then expresses that he must destroy you to fulfill your plan, and fortunately, you'd already forgiven him if he would have to kill you.
Wow, that's really convenient.
Erebor teleports you to a battlefield for the final battle, as Karamicklin is too dangerous and is obviously sided with our enemy. As the spell takes you away, you hear Malcor telling you it's not too late to save Eschalon from the reckless plan of the Oracore.
Save Eschalon from what? It either becomes an uninhabitable slag heap or breaks apart due to pressure or a paradox or whatever. Fucking pick one. Eschalon's fucked no matter how you slice it.
During your teleportation, which seems to be lasting quite a long time, you realize you have control over how you teleport. Apparently having the Crux on you is finally having an effect on something, and you finally have the priority to decide something. Do you fight for Erebor, or do you fight for Malcor?
Oh, come on. Malcor is absolutely bullshitting you. We have spent 70 hours in this series with the definitive goal of stopping Malcor. And now, in the last 5 minutes, the game's like, we could have been wrong this whole time. Malcor could be right, so do you want to help him? It doesn't really matter who you help. You emerge on the battlefield and fight on the side you've chosen, as waves of enemies appear, culminating in a battle between dimensional eyes. You do have to participate a little bit to cause your side to win, but you're barely really involved. Once your side wins the fight, the opposing side presents the remaining Crux at your feet and just fucks off. There's the end. You don't even find out what actually happens. You played through 3 games for an answer for what part you play in all of this, or to find out what even happened. Just an ending to the story. And what do you get? Well, the game developers that made the game misspelled the name of their own fucking company on their final score page. Jesus fucking Christ. So there you go. That's what happens in Eschalon Book 3. You fight to find the Crux Stones to prevent Malcor from getting them, unless you decide to just give them to him in the last 5 minutes of the game. Character creation is still rigid, gameplay is still slow, with misses happening incredibly frequently, no matter how much you've pumped up your dexterity. The story just becomes abysmal with the inconsistencies between this game and the last game, as well as just lazy writing that decides to become a choose-your-own-adventure at the last possible minute for a truly disappointing ending. Even despite powering up for a 3rd time, your involvement in the final battle was actually totally inconsequential. Being I've played these games multiple times now, the difficulty means nothing to me, as I know how to handle most situations. I mean, at the very least, I like the addition of secret areas that gave you a very cool visual and sound cue when you found one, as well as a small boost to your experience. there's one thing that still really bothers me. I mean, it's not really just this game, but the entire series as a whole. In Echelon Book 1, the Auricor are used as a distraction to keep the Commonwealth Guard from stopping the goblins, and it's never really explained if they ever actually fight any Auricor. They're treated as non-existent beings initially, but then in the second game, when the Torax take over for the goblins as they were the next in line and under control of the same force, you don't find out until the end of the game that the Auricor were actually involved. Malcor was apparently in control the whole time, so despite thinking the Chancellor was a giant drooling imbecile, he was actually sending his troops to the root of the problem while still being under the control of Gramick, who was under the control of Malcor. Were the Commonwealth Guard supposed to slaughter the rest of the Auricor, leaving Malcor to do as he intended? Yeah, there's a lot of things about this game series that just don't make any sense. I know it's really obvious that I didn't like this game series, that I just wasn't having a good time with it. But I still played through it all, so I was hoping that at the very least there would be a satisfying close to the story. But the game couldn't even do that. I don't even know what I'm still doing here. But you know what? At least the one thing that comes out of this is that I'll never have to talk about this game series again. I mean, fuck me. They spelled the name of their own company wrong on the final screen of the game. This is what they leave you with. Good effort. I'm done.